Hello there. This channel is in danger, I fear, of turning into the OC marketing channel, which is categorically not what I want it to do. But they keep bringing out new versions of their Gostream Deck HDMI switcher, and each one has something interesting to say about it. So this was the original one. I did a full video about this, going through all the knobs and buttons and every menu option. And if you're interested in that, I will leave a link to that in the video description below. So that's the original Gostream Deck. Then a month, was it? Maybe 2 months later, they brought out the Gostream Deck kit, which is the same deck but in a box with a screen in it and all the ports brought out on the back so that you have an all-in-one portable version of the Gostream Deck. And I had a look at that and I said, oh, it's an interesting and a good idea. Well, goodness me, they've only brought out another version now, and this is it. This is the Gostream Duet. And the most obvious thing about it, you'll notice, is these little things on the side. They've made 3 changes, basically, to the original version. The most obvious one, yes, BNC connectors, and that can only mean one thing, SDI inputs. You're quite right. It is, however, still, note, a 4-channel switcher. So you've got your row of 4 preview buttons, 4 take-to-air buttons, and each of those channels, 1, 2, 3, 4, can be either HDMI, you've got your standard HDMI on the back, or you can select it to be one of the SDI inputs on the side. And the way you do that is you go into the menus and you click down and you say input 1, do you want to be SDI or HDMI? So it gives you a lot more flexibility with what you can now plug into this thing, but it doesn't suddenly transform it into an 8-input switcher. Except it almost does, because you've got the 8 macro buttons here, and I have tested this. You can program the macro buttons to set what source a particular input is from. So, for example, macro button 1 could make input 1 HDMI, and macro button 2 could make input 1 SDI. So you've got 8 buttons, you could do all 8 variants. So if you are just okay to do an extra button press before you take something to air, you could go SDI, take to air, HDMI, take to air, and sort of get round the fact that you've actually only got 4 channels, with the caveat that if you switch the live channel from HDI to SDI, there will be a little glitch. So that's the one thing you wouldn't be able to do, is if you wanted to go from channel 1's HDMI to channel 1's SDI, you'd need to cut away to something else and then cut back, having changed it. But it is pretty impressive, I think, to have the flexibility of the 4 SDI and the 4 HDMI all in one pack. I have put a request on the OC Facebook forum, which if you have one of these, it is definitely worth joining, suggesting that they could make the preview buttons long press to toggle between HDMI and SDI. So your live buttons would always be just take to air, but if you press and hold, that would be quite a quick shortcut way, I think, to toggle that input between HDI and SDI, and they need to mark up on the multi-view which one it currently was or something. But I think that would be a useful thing to do and quite easy to achieve in software. So stand by, they've taken note of the idea, and hopefully it'll be something they can implement. If they don't, then you can always do it by the macros, but of course that then means all your macro buttons are used doing that switching and not doing something else. Anyway, that's major change number 1. Major change number 2, you won't really be able to see this, but if you stare down the end of it, the air vent, there is now an actual fan in there doing some active cooling. The original version had an air vent but no fan. It was purely passively cooled, and it would get very, very hot, particularly on this slightly recessed square here, which must be where the electronics touches the case or something. It would get 60 degrees or more, steaming hot there. So all sorts of people on the Gostream Deck forum on Facebook posting up pictures of their inventions with all kinds of computer fans and things to keep it cool. Well, they've listened, so they've now put a fan in there, and you can run it in auto mode or set it manually to low or high. There is no off setting. So if you preferred having it off, if you're doing a short broadcast where you know it's not going to get too hot, you are going to have to live with the noise. Of course, if you are merely the operator of this thing and the people who are talking are sitting a long way away, fan noise won't bother you. But if you are a I don't know, a gamer or something, or a solo broadcaster where you are going to be taking part in the broadcast, you may not want that fan noise. I'll give you a demo. So imagine this is on the desk in front of me here, and I've got the microphone on me here and I'm chatting away. Let's say there's a camera and mic on me. Here is some room sound with it on silent, as if you were using the original Gostream deck. And now I'll just plug this in and switch it on, and you can hear how loud the fan noise is. So switch it on. And that's the fan noise in high, which it always seems to start up in. And I think that's a fair representation of where it would be in relation to me sitting there operating it. So you've got this gentle whoosh coming out the side, and in a second it will take itself back down to low. There we go, that is now the low setting for the fan. And by way of contrast, if I switch it off, there we go. So there is fan noise. It's not the quietest fan in existence, and you cannot turn it off. So if you really, really need a quiet system, you might be better off with the original one and making up your own cooling mat. Otherwise, maybe they'll add in firmware an off setting for the fan if you want to do your own cooling solution for that. I can't imagine it would be that hard. A little improvement there. Right, so we've got SDI, we've got a built-in fan. Oh, and just one thing of note, actually. On the original one, the SD card slot is over on the right, but presumably because we included that fan, the SD card slot is now over on the left, which does make me wonder why they stuck the BNCs on the side, because if you're going to retool everything to remake the whole case, then I would have thought they'd make it a bit taller and put the BNCs coming out the back next to the HDMI inputs. Just would seem a bit more logical to me. That looks a little bit like an afterthought with them on the side there, and they are quite close together, so you're going to have nimble fingers to get your BNCs on and off. I'm nitpicking, really. It just struck me as a bit odd that they're sticking out the side. And then the third change they've made in the Gostream Duet is that they have included the NDI HX license, which for the original version was a firmware update that you had to pay, I think it was about £70 for. So if you didn't want it, obviously it saved you some money, but if you do want it, well, it now comes included in this. And in terms of pricing, again, they've done pretty well here. The original deck retails at about, a shade under £300, $300, I think. And this one, as I understand it, is going to be retailing at a shade under $400. So for $100 extra, you've got the BNCs, you've got the cooling fan, and you've got the NDI HX license. So if you need those things, I would say that is certainly the one to go for. If you need a fan you can switch off, then this is not the one to go for. I'm not going to give you a demo of how this works. It is identical to the original one in terms of pressing buttons and switching things to air. So as I say, I've done a video with that, and I'll leave a link to that in the video description below. But certainly Osee seem to be coming out with new versions of this every couple of minutes. They are also updating the firmware for it. So at the time of filming this, the next release of firmware is in beta, but it is going to give you the option to control this from a computer. So as long as your Gostream deck is plugged in to via the Ethernet to a router, and the PC is on the same network, and the PC can be connected via Wi-Fi to that router, then you have the option of computer controlling all the settings and the inputs. Now, when this originally came out, Osee made a big thing of it's a standalone device, you don't need a computer to control it, you can do everything on it. Well, that is certainly true, but it is a bit fiddly to go click, twiddle, click, twiddle, click, twiddle on the menu buttons. So the option to get to those settings really quickly in the software is certainly quite useful. But moreover, they've made a version of that control that runs with the BitFocus Companion, which is the software people use on the Stream Deck. Not to confuse the Stream Deck with the Gostream Deck. This is a Gostream Deck. A Stream Deck is a little thing full of buttons which you can program in software to do macros of something else. So you'll now be able to control your Gostream deck from a Stream Deck using the BitFocus companion software. In other words, set up a little box with buttons on it to operate macros to quickly change things around, which could include, for example, toggling these inputs between SDI and HDMI and changing all sorts of other settings without having to go into the menu and twiddle the button. That software is currently in beta, should be coming out of beta fairly soon. And yeah, Osee quite receptive on that Facebook group to people making suggestions for improvements and so on. Anyway, quick video, hopefully quick video, just showing you that they have yet another version out with yet more options for your streaming. Any questions, drop them down in the comments below or go over to that Facebook group. Thanks for watching. Cheerio.